Like right
Boom,
before
and
the
we're
show starts.
live. Yeah, well,
Gotta get
no,
it.
yeah, talk about. So before we jumped on here, we were doing Andrew's. tell the, tell,
So that's a quick face fascial release.
all right, and I haven't had a
So
chance
if
to
you
do this
open
yet.
up,
So
you lift up your eyebrows, you like tightening up the skin here, then you're kind of opening the mouth and you're allowing all of this to stretch. And so I just hold that sometimes, especially if I'm about to be like talking for a while. It feels real good on the face and especially on the cheeks.
when millions of people start watching our podcast, this is what we do first 30 seconds. All right, here we go. Hang on. All right, do it again so I can do it.
Okay, so
Eyebrows
you're gonna
and
lift
then
up your
jaw.
eyebrows, scrunch up, yep. And then you're going to open up your mouth, kind of stretch this away. Yeah, look up, look up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
so
your eyes, you definitely
you
want to
feel
look.
all the
Saying where should
you
you look?
definitely want
Because the eyes are a part of it.
yeah.
So where should we
Yeah,
look
and then
since
I
that's
don't know, like do you feel that in your in like this part of your face? Like when I do it, I feel it here a lot.
yeah, right. Yeah, right here.
Yeah. It's pretty
Okay.
interesting.
Well, welcome to the Power Talks podcast. This is our special 10th episode, 10 question Q&A. So you guys submitted 10 questions, and we're here to answer them. Question number one, the first one we received was our thoughts on functional patterns and Naudi Aguilar. And then included in that question, the person said there seems to be a lot of overlap with WEC method. Andrew, you want to start this one out?
Yeah, so first things first, I think functional patterns is doing some amazing things. But where I think it gets convoluted is with Naughty, the creator, and his way of being on social media. I think that's where a lot of people get turned off to the idea of functional patterns being really good because of the way he acts on social media and just the way that he goes about talking or promoting his product.
Yeah, a lot of people get triggered with what he has to say, especially when he's attacking the deadlift or anything like that, right?
Not even just that, it's also like the way that he's so certain that functional patterns is the only thing that could work for anybody.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and let us be clear too, right? Like we talk about Natty and functional patterns all the time, and they do phenomenal work. You know, the results, you can't deny the results, and their system is far beyond what majority of trainers and people who exercise it. The theory behind it and the science behind it is, I mean, this guy is a genius. Like the product is phenomenal. It's not a bad product at all. It's a great product, and they're producing phenomenal results. I think if you get into certain little other details, like is this lift detrimental, or can we really not do this lift? You know, then we can start to disagree. But you can't deny how great what they're doing is. And if you haven't done a certification with them, or you haven't done the free course or the 10-week course, like do it because it's worth it, I would say.
100%. And I've been playing around with their stuff for the past couple of years. I've never taken anything official from them. Um, but the the benefits are absurd. The benefits are absurd. Like the way you start learning how to use your body in space, especially with the cable trainer. You get the cable trainer and you're allowed to move in ways that you normally would, but with resistance. So therefore your body is having to properly learn its stacking, it's properly moving as if the core is doing the work. Like you truly feel the core moving, you feel the spine staying up, and every little micro movement you do is felt because of that cable.
Yeah, yeah. Understand that the training system is focused around the posture, it's focused around the gait, and it's focusing around the integration and the alignment of the body, which a lot of people exercising are not considering those things. yet they're so important. Apart from breathing, the most important human function is moving, walking, locomotion, and that's what their training system is largely focused around. So you
Well, I
can't go
mean,
wrong.
like Weck always says, if you can't move, you're not getting food. Like
Yeah, you're not going
movement
to eat
is
tonight.
survival. Yeah, like, movement
Yeah.
is survival on the end of the day.
And so, we did some notes on this as well. So I wanted to throw this out there, right? Like a lot of there's a lot of variability in what they're doing, right? So there's many ways to achieve the desired outcome. And so what you have to understand is when you're repeating the same program over and over, like most people do, which is like the same exercises for the arms, the legs, they do it on this day, they do it on that day. As the athlete's body adapts to the applied loads, they no longer lead to further progress. So the main problem boils down to finding a way of continuously intensifying the training loads. Now that's for an athlete, but you can apply that same concept to your own training. So as you adapt to the training, you no longer you no longer progress. You could think of law of accommodation, 3 weeks, Louis Simmons theory. So the variability, I believe, is very important with what they do.
100%. And I mean, something that we've been learning recently is that the fascia really likes to be challenged. Like the neuromyofascial web likes to be continuously learning and adapting. And the thing is, the stimulus of a hinge can be achieved so many ways, or using the glutes for thoracic extension, for example. That's something they like to do a lot with the stick. They hold a stick and then they stand up. So it's like the idea of the glutes promoting thoracic extension. Like an example in the kettlebell world would be a kettlebell snatch. So that's an exercise where we use the glutes to promote that thoracic extension to lift and to catch the kettlebell up high. So like just that right there, they have endless amounts of exercises that achieve that desired outcome. And something that our fascia really likes, the idea of training fascia is moving it differently.
Yeah, yeah. And so you could think like when they're patterning an exercise and and I don't want to speak for them, but it's pretty clear, right? So when they're thinking about the training system, it's patterning the exercise to life, to gait, to movement. Versus many people, they're just patterning one exercise. And it's like while you may push up the numbers and get really strong on a certain exercise, because it's how most people look at training, right? They think bodybuilding, powerlifting. That's just that's the most popular thing out there. So you're patterning your body to get good at an exercise rather than get good at a movement pattern. And so when you're thinking about getting good at a movement pattern, the variability of the exercise is it's endless. You could create like Andrew, like do we ever do the same like moves? Like there's a couple staples, but like our training and their training is always changing and evolving because you're
Very,
following up.
very rarely doing the same things week to week. Very rarely. I mean, I have my few staples like the low back extension, for example, the QL extensions. I love getting on the GHD, the glute ham developer. I love doing a bunch of different things like Zercher lunges, but week to week, I'm always adding some kind of variability, some kind of difference in the structure, how each thing is placed, um how to evolve the exercise that I did last week. Maybe I'll do the same exercise, but maybe this week it's a rotation lunge, a lunge with a rotation. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
and just like moving because now we're kind of talking about our own training, which is good, right? This is where the conversation, the question has led us, right? So like one of your staples you just said is the GHD and the back extension. But using those tools, how many different exercises do you do? Like it's not like you do it the same way.
Endless.
Endless. Like talk about some ways. Like I've seen you throw balls, I've seen you twist, I've seen you do all types of different single leg. Like talk about some of just on the GHD and the back extension, talk about how many ways that you could use that tool.
So right now, my favorite way to use it is a single leg and then the other leg shaped like a four. So you're creating a four with your leg. Like you're having one leg is going like this, where your knee is on the pad, and you're just using one leg. So then it's the outer part of the glute when you're going up, on the leg that's bent. It's the outer part of the glute that's getting fired up like crazy. I love doing single leg. I love putting the inside of my foot and then doing like adductor raises on there. where I'm really just using the adductor to lift myself up and down. I like to do I like to do QL extensions. I like to do rotations where I will go down on one side of my hip, so like place my head over my foot essentially, go into the other side and then lift up from the other hip, then go down, come up, just do like circles like that. Grab the ball, slam it, grab the ball, slam it, put a band on my back and do like the way you were doing it with the ball, where you're
Yeah, I
coming up
really
with a band and coming up aggressively.
Yeah. I really like what you're talking about with the circles. Because even with the circles, like if you're doing that exercise, because you just heard Andrew talk about it, you could do big circles, you could do smaller circles, you could do really small circles, like, and then you could change it up the same exercise that way. So you want to, you know, change the pattern so the brain is continuously learning, right? We're not just frozen in our training. So we're always learning, we're always evolving and getting better.
And the thing is, if you want to get good at a sport or you want to get really good at life in general, you can't be doing the same things over and over because the stimulus, your body doesn't accept the stimulus anymore. It accepts it as a pattern. So walking isn't necessarily a stimulus to most people because while it can be a good exercise, it's not a great stimulus. There's a difference between exercise and stimulus because our body has a certain amount of time to where that stimulus is taken the best advantage of. And that once that time period is up, the body just sees it as a pattern. And so we're not really evolving much at that point.
Yeah, and this is a great time to transition to the second question because it's right along these lines of you can have these staple exercises but change them up. So the second question is the top three movements to improve athleticism. But before we get into that though, Andrew, we want to do this on the podcast now at the beginning of the episodes where we're gonna just give you guys what we're studying or some books that we're currently looking into. So I have two here that were actually given to me. And Andrew has some ready as well. We're just going to share this with you guys so you can get this information on your own. So the first one I have
Yeah,
here is,
yeah.
yeah, the first one I have here is called How the Mind Works. This was given to me. Both books I'm going to share were given to me. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but How the Mind Works. Um, let's see. What does it say here? Winner of the Los Angeles Times Book Prize and the William James Book Prize. Bestseller, one of the world's leading cognitive scientists, tackles the workings of the human mind. So I have two books on neuroscience. This one right here is the other one. This one is Your Brain on Pain. So it goes into essentially how the brain is controlling the body and it talks about neuroplastic transformation. So your brain is plastic. There's a theory out there that what did they say, Andrew? Your brain stops developing after 25. It's completely flawed. They proved that untrue. The brain is plastic your whole life, so you can change your brain. And I haven't read the book. I just gave these, but these are the two books that I am going to be digging into in the near future.
Well, that brings me into something. I had two books here, but I'm gonna add a third one.
Nice.
So staying on the brain subject, this has been a book that I've been using. I actually got this in February at the outside the box. This one is Change Your Brain Every Day by Daniel Amen. Daniel G. Amen. I will I have the book cover here.
Oh yeah, the two books I listen because yeah, you may have the title, but you don't if you don't have the author. So number one, How the Mind Works. That's by Steven Pinker. And then we have this book here, Neuroplastic Transformation: Your Brain on Pain. That's by Michael Moskowitz, medical doctor, and Marla D. Golden. Looks like this. You can't get it on Amazon, but you can get it off of their website.
We'll put a link to that. We'll put a link to that.
Yeah.
And then this is Change Your Brain Every Day. There you go. By Daniel G. Amen. It's an amazing book where in the book it states that every single day your brain comes up with I'm not going to butcher the number, but many thousands of new hippocampus stem cells every single day. And so, technically speaking, you can be a different person every single day. Now, obviously, that's not great for social purposes, but technically speaking, you can be a different person every single day. That's just how plastic the brain is. Okay, and then going off of that, this is a book on fascia. So it's called Fascia, the tensional network of the human body, the science and clinical applications in manual and movement therapy. This one's by a few different authors. First one is Robert Schlepp, Carla Stecco, Mark Driscoll, Peter A. Huging. Yeah, so this is just a great book. It really dives into the anatomy of fascia. It dives into the proprioception of fascia. It goes a little bit of a different direction than anatomy trains, although they do have a ton of pictures of the anatomy trains in this book. Um, yeah, here we go. The superficial front line, the deep arm line. It's hard to say. It's hard to like truly find big differences in either book because they both really just talk about how to use the fascia to your advantage as a massage therapist slash movement professional. Then another book we have here is Anatomy Trains, the second edition. Okay. This is a book that both Brett and I are extremely big fans of, the Anatomy Trains. It highlights the lines, the myofascial lines throughout the body, and you truly learn how the entire body is connected. So if you're somebody who's very interested in learning about the body, learning about perhaps a way to get out of pain, or maybe a way to exercise proficiently, I would say the anatomy trains is it's kind of a guide. It teaches you the ways the fascia is lined throughout the body. So you have a better understanding of what the inside of your body looks like, if that makes sense. So I'm a huge fan at the moment of learning about the fascia because I just think it's a lost segment in most teachings, most trainings, because the concept of the anatomy trains and the concept of the fascia network is that because we're so integrated from top to bottom, movement should be not should be, but movement is a whole body system. It's not just an isolation part. So if you're someone who's interested in learning a little bit more about your body, if you want to better your practice as a coach, if you want to better your practice as a massage therapist, I 100% recommend both of these books, Fascia, the Tensional Network of the Human Body, and The Anatomy Trains by Thomas Myers.
One
So
thing I
going
love
on to oh,
Yeah, just one thing I love about the fascia books is it makes you have to be creative and when you try to apply it to training because you learn about the properties of the fascia, like for example, elasticity, viscousness, um, things like that. And but applying that to the training, you start to have a new understanding of the value of like jumps and catches and throws and all these types of things. So it applies directly into the next question, which is the top three movements to improve athleticism. First comment on that, I'll say I think it's unrealistic to boil it down to just three movements. Um, but if I had to pick three, we'll expand on this. If I had to pick three, here's what I would go. I would go repeat jumps. I would go max velocity sprinting. Oh, we got some balloons popping up there. Did you see that, Andrew? Okay, we have repeat jumps, max velocity sprinting, and landmine clean and jerk. Those are going to be my top three. Max velocity sprinting,
okay.
pretty clear. The landmine clean and jerk, that's going to be for your absolute strength. Okay, that's going to substitute in for like barbell power cleans. overhead snatch, like things that most coaches are doing. That's where my landmine clean jerk is going to come in. Max velocity sprinting, very important. Repeat jumps, can't beat the repeat jumps. Repeat jumps are critical for developing that elasticity and that explosiveness.
So on my top three, again, it's very unrealistic to boil it down to three. But if I were to pick three exercises that absolutely need to get mastered, if you want to be very athletic, I would say foot scrunches, towel scrunches, trap three raise, and the coil. Any exercise that involves the coil. Um, that could be the landmine clean and jerk. That could be a press where you're coiling. That could just be the banded isometric hold. But that exercise right there is going to be a key concept in getting you more athletic and getting you to understand the body a little bit more. So let's go into the concepts right now because
Yeah.
I think it's a better thing to talk about concepts rather than specific exercises because within those concepts there's endless amounts of exercises.
Real quick though, talk about because you mentioned body like being aware of your body. Talk about why you like the trap three raise.
So the thing about the trap three raise is it forces you to use the entire body in order to promote thoracic extension, especially if you're doing it on a low back extension on that machine. Because you have to use your feet to press into the pad. So then all of a sudden your calves and your hamstrings are on fire. Your glutes have to be fired up in order to keep your back in this I guess we could call it 45-degree angle. And then put your shoulders down and back. Now you have to squeeze your lats and you're actually using the lats in order to pull the arms up without getting into that banana posture, without curving your back as you're going, trying to keep that back straight as possible. And you're lifting up those shoulders and bringing them overhead and you're coming back down. So that right there is an entire body movement from toe to head. And the whole purpose is using the strength of the glutes and the hamstrings to promote thoracic extension. So if we want to talk about a jump, if we want to talk about running even, running is essentially using your arms, using your glutes to stay upright while you're getting into a sort of a thoracic rotation, not necessarily a extension, but a rotation. So if we're strong in the middle, the concept of both sides utilized, which is David Weck's entire training model, using the trap three raise puts together that thoracic rotation into an extension and it stabilizes both sides at the same time while connecting you from the foot to the head. So I really love that exercise. That's that one for me. That one for me has got to be it's got to be a top exercise in my training and building mobility, building strength, and getting some really big traps.
Made me want to go hit some trap three raises. So what we decided to also talk about on this question was three concepts, three methods of training rather than three specific exercises. So my top three methods of training for athleticism would be number one, coiling core training. That's what you see in sports. The spine doesn't stay stiff, straight, and neutral. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen when you walk. It doesn't happen when you sprint. It doesn't happen when you swing a baseball bat, throw a baseball, hit, do whatever it is. Never happens. Spine's never straight. So coiling core training, and like Andrew already said, that could be applied to many things. Nervous system development. So training fast, getting your brain to react quick and make split second decisions, immediate, without hesitation, without fear. There would be no fear. There would be no freeze. There would be no hesitation of the body if you're training these patterns. If you're training fast, faster than the sport, because you're comfortable there. That's not abnormal. Like when you get put into a situation in the sporting environment, you're used to making decisions because you're developing the nervous system. Third concept for me would be elastic reactive training. So that's going to be like your sprinting, your jumping, all of that rebounding. It could also be done for upper body as well. That elastic reactive property of the body.
Okay, so I'm gonna go into mine, but I'm gonna add something real quick because we have overlaps. We have overlaps with it. Um, because we didn't have different exercises, different concepts. But I want to go a little bit different with mine. So first things first, I love the coiling core. I love the coiling core because again, my whole sport is essentially long side, short side. I'm doing a landmine clean and jerk on each stroke. But I don't need to get further into that. The nervous system development. So yes, training fast in order to train the nervous system to be twitchy
Mm-hmm.
and to just allow the brain to keep it. You want to keep it. But another step is nervous system development is also faster training because you're giving the nervous system the ability to calm down in positions and the ability to not just understand movement but trust movement. So I would boil down the nervous system training to also any of that WEC method stuff to where we're doing a coiling core because it all ties in together. Even though these are technically separate concepts, they all tie in together in the end of the day. And
Yeah, I
then
was gonna say, I know. Well, give your third one. Well, and I'll jump in because I already jumped in. I was gonna, when you think about, because I gave elastic, reactive, and nervous system development. Like if you think about running like a max velocity sprint, you're training that quality. But you could also do like nervous system stuff with like hand, like taps, so like or light drills, or call outs, like where you're uh, we've done a ton of drills like where you're hitting like right side, left side, both sides, and you're just tapping your hands really fast. So you're doing like hamstring curls like on a med ball, like you're laying down flat and you're doing like the quick like hamstring flutters. So that wouldn't be the elastic reactive training. But yeah, sorry, third one.
yeah, and then instead of elastic reactive training, I like the idea of isometrics with an explosion. So that kind of also that ties into the elastic reactive training. So what I quantify that as is being able to hold an isometric position and then being able to explode out of it. So my concept is, or my idea of this concept, I would say, is that if your body trusts the movement a ton, that you can stay in an isometric, you can properly hold the position. Like let's say you're trying to float your heel and just stay with your heel floated, and then all of a sudden you can get into a max vert jump, and it's pretty close to what you would do at 100%. Then you're in a pretty good spot. You're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. So there's a lot that you guys can do with that information. There, I mean, the coiling core, there's unlimited drills, isometric to an explosion. That, I mean, you could create endless amounts of drills with that. Fast train, we just talked about being creative, hundreds of drills. So the drill is almost less important than the concept that's behind it. So when you're training a property, that's what
One
you're
thing I
doing.
want to get into real quick. One thing I want to get into real quick because I just read the notes that I took on this. But one thing, in an isometric, the mind is forced to feel the whole body and gives the athlete time to reposition and find the perfect angle. This in turn ends up tying into nervous system development as well because the athlete is rewiring their fascia and rewiring their nervous system to feel the perfect angle, whatever feels good for them, while maintaining full body tension.
Love that. That's perfect. That's great. Yeah, I know a lot of great coaches that love isometrics. That isn't that like isn't that the first one of the first things they do in triphasic? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's used by a lot of coaches on recovery days because there's not a huge eccentric load on the body while you're doing it. So it ends up being real good, supposedly, according to research, for
Another
your low body.
thing another thing that I really like when it comes to developing athletes is a high low CNS split. So since I've been really, when it comes to working with the athletes, diving into the nervous system and the high intensity work, if you're doing high intensity, if you're doing max velocity sprints, you're doing elastic, you're doing jumps, you're doing, crazy twitchy things, or that is very demanding on the brain and body. So going from a training day like that, now I think you could do 2 days like that back to back. Of course, they'd be slightly different, but having a low CNS day, having a day scheduled where we're still training, we're still moving, we're still working good movement pattern, but we're not going to exert past a certain percentage of our effort. I think that's very important. That way you can recovery. So it's a low CNS recovery workout. Implementing something like that and scheduling it into your training routine, I think is very important.
Oh, how would you go about that? Because I could talk a little bit how I manage my CNS, but speak on how you do that.
Yeah, so for a fighter, and you have to understand, it is totally, you have to feel the body. So there's there's the plan, there's the plan of the coach, there's the plan of the athlete, but then the plan of the athlete's body. So you may have it in sight that you're in the plan that you're going to do these 2 training days back to back, but then you come in on day 2 and you're fried, you're gassed. Okay, well now day 3, we're going to go ahead and put that at day 2, which is just a low, maybe it's an aerobic type workout, maybe it's some endurance work. So for example, like for a fighter, they love running their 5 mile runs. So we can schedule that and we can not push the pace on that 5 mile run or that 5K, and we can keep it under 70%. That's your low CNS work. You're just going for a little run, or maybe it's 30-minute shadow boxing. Maybe it's an hour shadow box. You're keeping it low intense, but you're working good technique. We can have days like this wrote out in the program. Let's say it was 2 high intensity days, hard pad work, bad work, sparring, weight room training. Third day, we're hitting an aerobic workout. Um, we have that road up, but maybe we put it in on day 2 instead of day 3, or maybe we do, maybe it follows the plan. We feel good for our 2 high intensity days. Day 3, got a nice low impact, low CNS aerobic workout. That's how I go about implementing those things. Just the key is just low intensity. You could think 75% max. Like keep it low intensity, work technique, get better at your skills. Endurance work, great time to work that. That's how I implement it.
Yeah, so when I look at the CNS, for me it's on a basis. So I like to, because I also think there's such thing as CNS training. Like you can get better as you go. So I like to kind of push it a little bit. Um, and where I go is I go 1 day compression, 1 day decompression. That's how I go about my training days. But a decompression day could be high CNS because I'm going really hard on the decompression lifts. For example, a trap 3 raise, where I'm going pretty heavy and I'm really using the whole body. So I look at my training phases as what did I do the day before? Let me undo, let me undo that the next day. So it's dedicated. I guess you could say it's 1 day high, 1 day low, 1 day high, 1 day low. And then during the day that's high, I'm seeing what my deficiencies are. And then on the low day, we're decompressing that by undoing slash working on what was weak during the high day.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like the compress, the compress, decompress. When I was first writing out programs and implementing this, and when I was first reading about the theory of high-low CNS, it is one on, one off. But just through experience, in my personal experience, I've found that we can handle back-to-back high
We
CNS
can handle
training
three,
days.
four. We can
Yeah,
handle
yeah,
three, four of them.
yeah, 100%.
So I don't take the gas off the brakes until my body tells me.
But what do
So
you
like
say
I
to
said,
somebody? What do you say to somebody, Andrew, that says that they can train 7 days a week high? Are they actually training high? There's no way.
no, they're
There's no way.
not. You could train 7 days a week because I do that,
Mm,
but you can't do it high every single day.
no.
And well, you could do what you think is high every single day.
Yeah.
You could do what you think is high, but you're not actually that you're not actually doing it every single
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, and if you really wanted a true test of that, let's take some times on a max velocity sprint, and then see how that goes.
Not even that, bro. Like just get to your third set, and if you're doing the same weight that you did every single day, let's say you're going max effort, 15 reps, 2 plates on the landmine jerk, 15 reps, 4 sets, and you're doing a cleans. You're doing 15 cleans with 2 plates. You're gonna tell me that on day 4 of doing that every single day, you're gonna be able to keep the same speed as day 1? No,
No,
no.
not gonna happen. Definitely not gonna happen. If that was the case, we wouldn't need recovery days. And also,
And
as an
we wouldn't need
as an athlete, understand when you need a day off versus a low training day, because those are they're similar but they're different. You gotta take your days off. It's very important. You gotta sleep. You gotta hydrate. Basic stuff. People overcomplicate it, but sleep good, stay hydrated, eat good food. Best recovery you're gonna get.
And there's some days where your training really is just you getting onto the field and maybe doing like 2 or 3 mini drills, and that's it. Like I can tell you, there were days where my training consisted of me going into the pool and doing a full 20 minutes of doing the same thing over and over, just like a specific drill of feeling the water. Where I would swim, do like 4 kicks, and then pull my hand like this. Just not even get a full stroke. Just pull my hand like that, getting like a retraction of the shoulder. And that was the training day.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There is
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. I love talking about the theory of mental toughness. Uh,
The David Goggins shit is it's not. I have my feuds with this because in every other aspect of life other than training, it's applicable.
yeah, 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 yeah. Like yeah, for sure. There's a difference between having a strong mind and having a sound training program.
Because if you're gonna just destroy your body, you're gonna give your body and your mind so much trouble after that that it's truly not worth it. Like who do you
You have
who do
to
you think you're impressing?
you have to understand that high lactic workloads damage skeletal muscle mitochondria. So as you're hitting these high lactic workloads, you're diminishing the speed and the effectiveness of the type 2 fast twitch muscle fiber. You're training slow if you're doing a high lactic workload, which is like that David Goggins, marathon running. Like we're gonna push through. We're gonna, our knees are falling apart, but who cares? Like you're not getting faster. You're not getting uh, even better at technique. So,
And that's going to lead to mental issues. I think from here we should skip to question 4
okay.
and switch the order of question 3 and question 4. And can fixing your movement patterns fix your mental health? So going off of what we were talking about of going way too hard in the gym with your training program and destroying your body, what ends up happening is your mental health takes a bigger toll than your body does. And Brett, you go on ahead and talk about your 2 cents on this.
Yeah, I mean, and I have some studies prepared, but just without that, you can take an assessment of your own body. When you're in pain, it puts you in a semi-depressed state, especially if you're an athlete. And this is just, from going through it myself. And I know Andrew, you can certainly speak about this, but if you have an injury and you're trying to train hard and you can't, that's really hard for an athlete to come to terms with. And it puts you it puts you down in the dumps a little bit when you're hurt and you can't train the way you want to train because you want to do it. You should be doing it, but you can't. You can't express yourself through movement.
And especially when movement itself doesn't feel good, that's one of the most diminishing things to the human mind and especially to an athlete because their whole identity is based on movement and sometimes movement in a specific way. So something as simple as a back tweak, that doesn't leave your head. That does not, there's no part of the day where you don't feel it. There's no part of the day where you're not in your body. And I have this very common phrase where I say, you are a permanent resident of your body. You can't escape living in it. So if there's something wrong with your house, you can't go about your day normally.
Yep. Yeah, you don't live in your apartment. You live in your body. Yeah, so fixing the movement pattern and the big movement pattern that people need to fix is their gait pattern, the way they walk.
It's a big one. It's the
So,
biggest one.
yeah, and I know, you've been diving a lot into that, so you want to let's talk about that a little bit, and then we can talk about some other things along with that, but because we're talking the topic is fixing the movement, right? So we have to go about actually fixing the movement, and there's one simple step that is not that difficult. There's a lot of little nuances, but there's one simple cue that you can start applying to the way you walk, which is what, Andrew?
Head over foot. So, what is head over foot? Head over foot is a natural stacking of the body. You're getting the shoulder, the head, the hip, the knee, and the foot all in a line. While you might be having a twist in order to achieve that head over foot, the whole body is stacking itself and it's creating this thing called balanced tension. So, balanced tension when you're walking means the whole body is taking the brunt of the load. There's not a single part of your body that's taking more than the other. And just that simple act of putting the head over the foot allows that balanced tension to occur.
And I love what you were talking about today on Instagram about how when you're walking in balance, you feel unstoppable. You feel like you could take off in a sprint at any time. You don't need to warm up. And it's like because you're currently walking, you're currently moving, you're currently warming up, you're hitting the right parts of the feet, you're balanced, you got everything lined up, ready to roll. And it's such a good feeling when you know that you're capable because you fixed your movement pattern.
And one thing I'll say is that I was, for the past 3, 4 years, overly focusing on what the feet were doing and not enough focusing on what the upper body was doing. And the reason why I've had such major breakthroughs in my walk is because Weck told me fix the upper body and the lower body aligns itself.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, I've just been completely focusing on the foot. How's my foot strike? How far out am I striking? What's the position of my foot? What part of my foot am I hitting? And then I started purely focusing on the upper body because I've spent enough time on the feet to where my feet know what to do already. And as soon as I started focusing on the upper body, focusing on putting my head over the foot, it changed everything.
Yeah, I would imagine there's a reason why it's head over foot and not foot under head.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, like and understanding this and getting into that balance is going to put you in a better position where you're not at risk of injury. Because when you're in pain, and I have some things I want to talk about when you are in pain, but when you're moving efficiently, the chances of you getting injured becomes significantly reduced, I would say.
And quick little back note, if you guys have a lacrosse ball, I'm doing some myofascial release as we talk. I'm just sitting on the ball. It's This is probably the least expensive tool that will be your best friend for life because you could do this absolutely anywhere. You could be at work and you could take off your shoe and you could just start rolling your feet. And just that simple act of rolling a ball on your foot makes differences that you cannot even comprehend until you do.
I have one in my gym. I have one in my gym. It's like $10 on Amazon, and it's two balls together, and I love it. It's like it's two balls together, and it's really nice. It's one ball is really nice as well. They have different purposes, but it's something about two balls, when you start getting into the balls.
It
Isn't that
just
right?
it just feels right when it's two, right?
Hey, we decided to record these podcasts where it's one at a time, so they can't see you laughing. They're like, why did he just start going into balls? That's kind of strange. A Yale study found that individuals with chronic pain are up to 4 times more likely to experience depression compared to those without chronic pain.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something that is extremely interesting because think about how deteriorating having pain is in your body. You automatically don't have the trust in your body. You don't feel like you're able to go about your normalcy of your days. And it kind of this may or may not sound right for political reasons, but you don't feel as much of a man.
100%. You don't feel capable.
You don't feel
That's
capable, and that just like imagine like yourself as a man knowing what you're capable of, and then you can't do those things because of something that seemingly is out of your control.
Yeah, and there's something about, going a little bit off of that, but something about when you train martial arts gives you I mean, there's like if you go into a martial arts gym, the crowd of people is it's not what you would expect. There's a lot of people that are loners, they're weird, they're a little bit goofy, but they find their spot in martial arts and the confidence just whew, it just skyrockets because you now understand well you it's not that you just understand but you have trained yourself to be a capable individual. Like, I mean, we have two human functions: fight, flight. So you got to defend yourself from danger or be able to run from it. So I think being able to defend yourself from a martial standpoint and being able to do sprints will dramatically increase your confidence in yourself.
I'm gonna combat you a little bit right there. I don't think just fighters are weird people. I think every athlete is kind of weird because
Yeah.
it takes a certain mentality to be that consistent with something and that repetitive, that obsessive. Takes a certain, I'd say, not mental illness, but definitely some you're more comfortable in your head than you are with other people.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think getting into any sport that you have a desire to get into will boost your confidence.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
Another
Well,
study.
on that,
Well, let's stay on here for a little bit. Another study focusing on veterans receiving care through the Department of Veteran Affairs found that back pain was associated with a 13% risk of suicide. Uh, back pain. Back pain. Another study involving 123,181 suicide descendants found that 8.8% had chronic pain, with back pain being the most common condition among them. The risk of suicide was higher among those with chronic pain compared to those without. Additionally, back pain was found associated with an increased likelihood of suicide by firearms and opioid overdose. That's terrible. That is so bad. That's um and it could be a contact injury, right? Especially when we're talking about, something with veterans, right? But an injury from the gym, an injury due to your training is totally unacceptable, especially when you're reading about the studies here. So yeah, it's tough stuff to listen to, but it's there's studies that are done and it fits along with the topic. So fix your movement patterns. Thoughts on BPC 157? That's the next question that we got. Thoughts on BPC 157? I'll just say right away that me or Andrew, we've never dabbled in BPC 157. I don't know much about it. I don't really know anyone that's used it, but we did some research on it and found that studies suggest that it may promote tissue repair, reduce inflammation, and support gut health. I know people are using it a lot for the tissue repair aspect of it. That's where I think it's the most popular. People are doing their knees or shoulders and whatnot. The research is definitely limited, and I don't have any personal experience on BPC 157, but I know it's a thing. You can do your research on it, but the research is limited. I don't think there's any human trials on it. I don't think it's actually legal to do that. But yeah, Andrew, did you do you have any studies on the BPC 157?
So basically, what I understand from it, again, neither one of us can consider ourselves experts in this, but based on what I understand from the internet, it's a body protection compound. So that's what it stands for. That's what BPC stands for. So it's not a steroid, but it has similar effects to what a steroid would have. I don't know. I'm not too sure if this qualifies as a peptide. I'm looking right now. I'm trying to see. It's naturally occurring. Okay, yeah, it's a peptide. So it's a peptide, and the whole role of peptides is to regenerate the body. Your body naturally produces these peptides. I don't know if it naturally produces 157, but I know that your body produces peptides to regenerate itself and to heal itself. So my basic understanding of BPC 157 is that it would tremendously increase your recovery rate.
Yeah. So to the person that asked this, I don't think that I would recommend it, but I mean, I don't know if Andrew would either, just because there's so limited research and we don't have any personal experience with it. But I know that I've heard some, I know I've heard some success stories, right? But I feel like it's one of those things kind of like surgery, like you want to kind of try out your options before you start putting in a substance into your body. That's my belief, at least.
Well, I have a slightly different opinion. So based on the stuff that I've read and based on the things, I do think it's a great option for people to avoid surgery if you combine the movement training. So if you have a true injury, like I'm not talking you have a little bit of back pain. I'm talking you have a torn ACL. I'm talking you have a torn rotator cuff. I'm talking you have a true injury and you are reincorporating movement into your training and you're learning how to move well again. If you combine that with the BPC 157, I believe it could have tremendous results. And I did I watched a Mark Bell podcast on this. So I did watch the Power Project. They talk very highly of it. Um Again, I haven't tried it before. I don't know, but it is something that I'm extremely interested in, and I have talked to a few different people. I talked to this guy who lives in my building who tore his ACL, and he's been on he calls it the Wolverine stack, which is BPC 157, and I forgot which other peptide. But essentially, he's saying that he tore his ACL, and 3 weeks after, he was able to walk without the brace. Granted, very short periods amount of time, but he's getting full extension and flexion on his knee and doing physical therapy, and he's progressing really quick.
Yeah, potentially the peptides or the BPC could keep you out of the off the operating table, right? Since it
Yeah,
has
so
that tissue
I would
repair.
argue that it's good and bad, but I do think that it could be bad if you don't actually have a true injury and you're not addressing it. Like let's say you have a powerlifting injury, like you tweaked your back doing a heavy deadlift and you just want to go right back into it. So you take the BPC 157 and you're just relying on that to heal your damage rather than going into the root problem, which is your movement.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Do you want to keep on with movement and training, or do we want to go into meditation?
Let's go into meditation. Let's go into meditation. Oh, wait, we didn't talk about the shoes.
Oh yeah, yeah. Let's go back. Yeah, we skipped the shoes. So we had a question that was modern our opinion on modern day shoes and the health of the foot. Modern day shoes and the health of the foot. I would just say, shoes have, and I recently switched to barefoot shoes. I'll tell you, it was the greatest thing. I don't wear regular shoes anymore. I don't wear any regular shoes, and it's been the greatest thing. But I train barefoot anyways. I've been training barefoot for years. But, with the shoes now, it's great. It's like I'm barefoot all the time, in certain ways. And they're even coming out, Andrew. I don't know if you've seen this. They're even coming out, I don't want to say the we have a guest coming on that's going to talk about this, but they're even making shoes that have a grounding sensation. So it's like a copper or some sort of tool that goes in the shoe, and it actually gives you the benefits of grounding. So this is the thing about the barefoot shoes is like you still have a rubber slab on. Like you're not barefoot. You're not getting the full sensory and the full like discharge into the earth. But now they're having shoes that actually do that. Have you seen that?
I haven't, but I've heard of it. Again, I don't think I believe that, but that's gonna be for when we get to that guest.
He wears them.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, we have, well,
Uh,
I mean, we could just say it. I mean, it's gonna be. Well, we have a fella coming on who is big into meditative practices, and he's deep into it. Worked with some big names in that space. And yeah, he wears these shoes. That's how I learned about this is through him.
okay. Yeah, so I think for the shoes themselves, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of being barefoot. And that being said, the reason for that is when we look at the most nerve endings in our body, number one is the fingers, number two is the feet. And whether that is one or two depends on how good you could feel it. But the foot is one of the most sensory rich parts of your body. If you're putting on a regular shoe that squeezes your toes in, doesn't allow you to flex and extend your toes, you're turning off an entire part of your brain that you would otherwise be using. And that's my main issue with the shoes. It's not about like yes, having weak feet is a problem because a weak what is it called? A weak foundation on a structure leads to collapse. But if you're going to be turning off an entire part of your brain, imagine wearing mittens on your hands all day. It's not the same. It's not the same. Like you can't feel. You can't feel. So that's why I'm a big fan of the barefoot, being barefoot and barefoot shoes. Although recently I've had my qualms with barefoot shoes because they feel very shoey.
Yeah.
Especially Vivo barefoot. I only want to wear the my Vibrams now. And it's just socially unacceptable to be wearing toe shoes.
Hey, but if you want to get 25% off Vivo barefoot shoes, you can use code Power Talks Podcast.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, I love Vigo barefoot. Don't get me wrong,
I'm
but
looking at the I'm looking at the theory here behind these in theory there's these shoes I'm talking about, copper plugs, rivets, silver threaded insoles, carbon. The materials are meant to conduct electrons from the earth into the body, assuming you're walking on a conductive surface like soil, sand, grass, or unsealed concrete. But it says the scientific evidence is limited and controversial. What I'll say
can
about
you
the
can you
shoes, what'd you say?
can you send me that?
Yeah, yeah, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
What I'll say about the shoes is that the shoes have a tight toe box and your feet are meant to spread, right? So if you're and there's some other things as well, but that's a big one. These shoes have tight toe boxes, and so your toes are being sandwiched. Like, could you imagine if your hand was just like this all day? Like, could you imagine that? Like, you were just like you couldn't move your hand apart from this. Like, how are you going to use your phone? Like, how are you going to write notes? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So at least with the barefoot shoes, now we were just talking about how they're a little shoey, but at least with the barefoot shoes, they can splay out a little bit more. And so you're able to articulate a little bit better. And some shoes are better than others. But a lot of the Nikes or the Adidas or whatever, like the shoe is literally like made like this, so your feet don't have room to articulate. So I would say that I'd say there's a lack of proprioception when you're wearing the regular big shoes. So I think with the barefoot shoes, you're a little bit more sensory aware. Even though you do have a rubber slab under you, you can at least feel a little bit better.
And here's
Um,
one thing: once your feet become really strong, then the Vivo barefoots feel like actual shoes.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah.
at the point where Brett and I are at, the Vivo Barefoots, it like when I say it feels very shoey, there is no support on that thing. There is so much give to those shoes. It's just gotten to the point
Yeah.
where my feet feel so much that even having a barefoot shoe on is like, nah, I don't need this. This is too much support.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about because I like when we're talking about this, that's the mindset that we have. But there's a lot of people out there that are thinking um that they're like, how? Like it like don't your feet hurt? And it's like, well, no, they don't actually. That my feet would probably hurt if I put them in a whatever, a big massive like shoe because then I can't use my foot.
And
Now it's like I'm
when I
walking on
walk with
like
people
two.
that don't, wait,
Now
go
it's like
ahead, go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say now it's like I'm walking with like cast on my feet. So I would
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
have pain if I wore those. Now I will say if you're like a marathon runner or something, there's probably a place for that. I do know people that have done long distance in barefoot shoes though. But yeah, what were you about to say though?
No, I was gonna say that when I walk with people that don't wear barefoot shoes, they try to walk slow because they're like, "Don't your feet hurt?" And I'm like, "No, man. Like, let's walk faster. My feet hurt when I walk slow."
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a certain there's definitely a getting used to process. But if you're doing the things that we talk about often on the show, which is putting a focus on the fascia and training the feet, strengthening the feet, this is going to be right up your alley. But wearing the barefoot shoes, uh, but certainly there's another aspect of training that can certainly benefit and go along with it. But walking is training though.
And with that, the barefoot shoes are extremely valuable because you cannot step wrong. If you step wrong with the barefoot shoes, if you're walking out of alignment, you feel it. And
Yeah.
the thing is, modern day shoes kind of mask that improper movement by giving you padding. So you're not feeling your foot strike when you're hitting. You're not feeling that vibration through your body because your body is walking on a pillow.
Right. That's the thing about the barefoot shoes is they give you that a certain level of sensory awareness where when you're walking in with those big bulky shoes, you really don't know what your foot is doing. You really don't. And so, if you take the shoes off, you're walking differently than when you're walking with the shoes on. And most people have shoes on the whole part of the day. So think about all the reps you're getting in. It's a lot of
We should go into a little bit of like why they make your feet weak too. Let's talk about the shape of the shoe. So how is you know what? I actually bought a modern day shoe
really.
for this reason.
No way. Andrew has Andrew does not have regular shoes, guys. I'm excited to see what you bring out here. What are you gonna bring out? Yeah, this guy is fully on the wave. I mean, I'm fully on the wave too, but I still have shoes from back in the days. I just don't wear them anymore. I just don't wear them anymore. I'm fully
Okay.
barefoot.
So I haven't put these shoes on yet, but I have them because I actually bought them for the purpose of content. So here we have a Nike. I don't know the name, but here we have a Nike. I want you guys first to look at the heel. I want you to look at this, and then I want you to look at the lift at the toes. I'm not even going to go into the toe box yet, but I want you to look at the lift in the toes. Now, imagine your foot is like this. You're automatically standing on an incline. It's like putting your foot on a slant board. Now, let's look at a Vivo. A Vivo is flat, meaning there is no drop. It's called a zero drop. There is no difference between this and this. Granted, there's a little bit of deviation in the shoe because I wear them a lot. So from here to here, it's a straight line. Now I want you to look at the toe box. It doesn't look that big in my hand. But when I compare it to this, look at the difference. It's almost double. Okay. So boom, look at this. And imagine what having a heel lifted is doing to your posture. It's making you stand forward. You're just always leaning forward. And then this right here doesn't allow you to use the whole middle part of your foot because your toes are constantly in this up position. Imagine standing barefoot and lifting your toes off the ground. Tell me how much balance you have. That's a quick little exercise for you guys to do for the listeners.
What did you tell them to do? Stand on their heels and see how much balance they have?
No, no, stand on their foot and lift their toes to just stand on the balls of their feet.
Uh, yeah, you probably
So
want to be able to do
just
that
do
more
that and
just.
tell me how much balance you have.
Yeah, and what really screams out at me when you're looking at those shoes is how uh most people have this massive like big time heel strike and then and then like but they're not even aware of it when they're wearing the shoes. But it's like this big like out in front heel strike, like imagine your leg being like this is like how people strike the ground and then the body like catches up. Um, yeah, you put on a pair of zero drop barefoot shoes and try to do that. You won't make it many steps.
You can't. I mean, your body feels it immediately. Like that, what you were saying, like the body, the foot hitting and then the body catching. You
Mm.
want, when you're walking head over foot, the whole body takes each step. It's like this. But when your heel striking very far, it's your foot over here. So imagine a fulcrum lever. And the bottom is the lightest part, but you're trying to get 1,000 pounds to move this way. You're not going to have the lightest part over here and then the rest of the fulcrum this way to then catch up. You want everything moving together so that each step has a balanced weight throughout the whole thing.
Yep. I think that's enough. I think that's people get the idea, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's it. So guys, get some barefoot shoes. We link them down there at the in the description every podcast. Highly recommend.
20% discount for it's 20 now, not 25, but 20% discount on Vivo Barefoots. Believe me, they're pricey shoes, so 20% goes a long way.
Yeah, it really does. Cause they're, yeah, it really does. Knocks off like what, 40, 50, $50, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So this question here is pretty much the only one that's not about training. So after this, we'll get right back into training. What are some techniques for beginners looking to get into meditation? So before we answer, I'm gonna turn it over to Andrew, but before we do so, like we already said on here, you're gonna want to tune in to when we have this guest on. His name is Nathan. He's going to be on, and this is what the entire episode is going to be about. So when you see the episode drop, you'll definitely want to tune in because you'll want to listen to his insights as well. But I know we both have some things to share. So Andrew, what you got? Beginners looking to get into meditation? What do you say to them?
So first things first, if you're a beginner, the hardest thing for you is going to be quote unquote clearing your mind. So let's get a reframe of what a meditation is. A meditation is simply exploring your own mind. So you're not going to be able to turn off the hamster wheel. The hamster wheel will not turn off. It's learning to identify what is going on inside your head. So if you're trying to meditate and you're just trying to breathe and think you're going to have a clear head, maybe you can have a clear head. But if you're going to have thoughts, you learn to start identifying each thought. If you start having emotions, you learn to start identifying each emotion. So that's technique number one, is using the meditation to identify what's going on inside your head. So for example, sometimes I'm meditating and my phone will keep vibrating. And then I'm getting frustrated. But guess what? As soon as I give the thought of the frustration, as soon as I give that emotion a name, as soon as I give it a label, it quickly disappears. And yeah, that's it for the first point. You go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, I never. So for me, well, actually, I never really gotten into into traditional meditation practices. That's why I'm very interested to talk to this fella. But one thing I have been reading about is the energetics of the human body and how kind of like what you said about clearing your mind, but also focusing your mind on just one thing. So they talk about in the example the book gives is about Reiki, and I guess they use I know nothing about Reiki, but they I guess they use symbols, and when you focus on the symbol or apparently something like this, the energetics of the body, something about it will have a an effect for certain. I'm definitely butchering this, but the point is like focusing the mind. So what I took from that information when I read it was visualization is very important. And so what I do is I'll have fighters at the end of the training session. And this goes for anybody. I do this with anybody as well. Just visualize for a moment. So visualize the venue, visualize the event that you're going to be in, visualize the techniques that you're going to throw, and just have a moment with yourself where that's all you're thinking about. And I believe the studies show that it actually has a change in the tissue, not just in the mental, but actually a change in the tissue. But for me, when it comes to meditation, I take a different approach. I meditate. The only meditation I've ever done is meditation on the word, which would be from the Bible. So the Bible says to meditate on the word. So, for example, when I was taking my most recent fight, I would meditate on this verse here, and I would just sit there and I would just repeat it to myself. And it's Second Samuel. I wrote it down. 2 Samuel 22:40. And it says, "For thou hast girded me with strength to battle. Them that rose up against me hast thou subdued under me." And I would just sit there before the fight and I was just sitting on that. And I would do it throughout training. I would do it throughout camp. I was doing it before I went into the ring. And it works for me. Certainly works for me. Another one I was meditating on is Psalm 56:11. And it says, "In God I have put my trust. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me?" And that's my meditation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big meditator. I've been in the practice for about 10 plus years at this point. It's something that gave me a lot of confidence in times where I didn't have it. It's something that allowed my body to gain the ability to heal. It took me through some dark times, and it's something that I turn to multiple times a day. I've gotten to the point where I could get into a meditation almost immediately, where I get into that. For me, I feel a very large amount of energy right here in the middle of my chest when I do a meditation. And I would say my current meditations, my favorite technique is the body scan, where I close my eyes. I start at the top of my head. I start just feeling what I can feel, and I place myself inside the body. And that's one of the main reasons why I fell in love with studying the body, was so that I could see my body better when I close my eyes. And being able to, this is another technique for beginners, by the way. If you look at an anatomy chart and then you go into your meditation, you are going to be able to visualize the body scan a lot better. And in my experience, when I'm able to visualize what I'm supposed to be feeling, it it allows the feeling to happen a little bit better. There's less expectation to it because I'm not trying to search. I kind of know. I kind of know what I'm looking for, and when I have my eyes closed, so then I could go from the top of my head, go into my face, go into my neck, go into my shoulders, all the way down to the feet, and place myself inside each part of the body to where I'm living in it and I'm truly observing what's going on. And that's been a great technique for me. And another one that Brett was talking about was the body's ability, regenerating the body's ability to heal through your thoughts. So I've been a big believer on this. Anytime I've gotten injured, anytime I even get a cut, I imagine that all the energy I'm feeling is being directed right towards that cut, right towards that thing. And it's kind of like a light where I even feel it. I've gotten so deep into meditations where sometimes I feel it to where that specific body part is being lifted by the light or it's being, I know it sounds crazy, but those who meditate quite a bit and go deep into the meditation can relate to where you start seeing crazy visuals when you're in the meditation with no substances. If you want to meditate clearly, do not smoke weed before, do not take an edible, do not take shrooms, do not take LSD. Do it on a sober mind, and you will see very intense visuals, and you will actually be able to get into that meditation.
And you can study this stuff too. Like a lot of people think this is some like foo-foo, craziness that people talk about. But when you start studying the energetics of the human body, you understand that this is a real concept. And I think with what you were talking about, if we understand the body and we study fascial lines and we study the structure of the body, you are able to feel and you are able to do that move that top down assessment and actually feel the energy flowing through the body. And that's why things like acupuncture are real, because the energy flows through the body. Like this isn't there's science behind it. It's not just some made up concept.
A gimmick. It's not a gimmick, and I had to fight with a lot of people over this for many years, especially I'm gonna out my mom here, but I had to out my mom. I had to fight with my mom a lot on this because I would spend a lot of time meditating throughout my youth, throughout my time, and she was very against it. Not against it, saying that I'm doing something wrong, but just saying that it was a waste of time, that I need to be doing things, that meditating is for women in their 40s who don't have jobs. And I'm like, Mom, if you could feel what I'm feeling and you could see what I'm seeing while I'm doing this, and the connection I've been able to build with my body, it is unreal. Like, I was talking to Brett the other day about feeling the vibration when you're walking. I've gotten to a point where I feel every single thing in my body so well that I have, I don't know, it's just it's a relationship that a lot of people don't have because they haven't spent the time in the body.
Yeah, it's a science to it. I do think it helps to have an understanding of the body, to have an understanding of the fascial lines, and to have an understanding of energetics, in that concept. So a book you could read for that is Energy Medicine and Therapeutics and Human Performance. Great book. The Body Electric. I haven't read that one yet,
Because
but
what?
it's been on my cart for a while. And then another thing too is I was talking about in my meditation, meditating on the word. And people who do that will talk about how doing other forms of meditation, I've heard it plenty of times. They'll say doing other forms of meditation is not okay. But they don't understand that they don't study energetics. They don't know that this is a real concept. They think that that's like bad. That's like going against God. Incorrect, I would say. When you understand the like what Andrew's talking about, what I'm talking about with visualization, this is real stuff. There's science behind it. There's a lot of value that can come out of meditation, visualization, energy medicine, and it's certainly not just fluff.
Interpretation. Another thing is interpretation, because when you spend time inside your mind, you learn to interpret a little bit better what's going on, what's actually going on inside of your mind. So I'm gonna go into a quick. quick little byproduct, or it's not byproduct, but it's a little tangent. One of the best authors of all time, which is Carl Jung, he was a psychologist who worked with, what was his name? He worked with, I don't want to butcher the name, but was it Freud? No, I don't. Let me do a quick research. Once the podcast is big, we're gonna have someone fact checking us. We're gonna have someone
I
fact
mean,
checking.
listen, guys, fact check us now. The stuff we're saying is,
Sigmund
I
Freud,
mean,
yeah, yeah. He worked with
yeah,
Sigmund Freud. I wasn't butchering myself. So those two are considered some of the massive pioneers in psychology. And so Jung was a huge advocate for dream interpretation and the effect of the subconscious on the reality of the subject. So
mm,
just that statement alone makes you think that if you are able to meditate, then you're able to self-reflect. Self-reflection is one of the biggest keys in order to evolve, in order to progress, is you have to take a look at what you are actually doing, how you are doing it, and what your goal is, what your image of yourself is, and how you see yourself. So that's why meditation is an extremely powerful tool because it allows you to get that perspective on yourself that only you can have.
yeah, and one thing is as well that we both got into was the there's this book called The Energy Bus, and it's not about what we're talking about necessarily. It's about, going about your life with a positive energy. But one of the things we took from it was like a gratitude practice and just, taking that moment and sitting and kind of analyzing. You could be on a walk or whatever, and, you know, being grateful. There's real, so I have this pulled up here. Gratitude activates key brain areas involved in emotional regulation, empathy and reward processing, moral cognition, and perspective taking. Gratitude strengthens your ability to stay calm, connect with others, experience joy and meaning. How good is that? Neurotransmitter boosts, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. Physiological effects reduces stress and inflammation. These stuff is real. It has a real effect in your body. Um, Improves sleep, mental health benefits, social and behavioral benefits. Key research findings. Daily gratitude journaling led to improved mood, optimism, and fewer physical complaints. Gratitude letter writing increased activity in the medial prefrontal cortex for weeks after. So, this is real stuff. Grateful people have better sleep, lower stress, and stronger relationships.
And not only that, two massive emotions can't exist on the same thought plane. So if you're grateful in any given moment, you can't be angry at the same time. If you're grateful, you can't be sad at the same time. So it's a very powerful tool to count your blessings in the midst of controversy, in the midst of very hard times. No matter what you're going through in your life, if you could take a second to be grateful for what's going on, if you could take a second to analyze what you've got that's good in your life, focusing on the good rather than the bad, that has tremendous effects on the way you live your life and the things that come to you because of it.
Yeah, gets you in that parasympathetic state.
And now there's a difference between thinking positively in life and thinking positively in business or athletics. So in life, we are not rewarded for focusing on the bad. But in sports, in business, we are tremendously rewarded for focusing on the bad. So don't let that convolute your idea of positive thinking. If you're an athlete needing to improve, you cannot just be like, I'm grateful for the ability to move. No, you have to fully analyze the bad things. If you're in a business, noticing the bad things is what's going to make you improve. We're talking specifically on a life point where if
Yeah.
you're in a relationship with somebody, you cannot just only focus on the bad that they do. If
Yeah.
you, yeah,
Yeah, it reminded me of our conversation with Caden. If you haven't watched that episode, you'll definitely want to watch that episode. It's a Olympic weightlifter, actually in the Olympic Games. Will be soon. Legit guy, young guy. But we were talking about, you know, when you're an athlete and you're competing at a high level, sometimes you don't like take a second and think about the younger version of you who could have only dreamed of being an Olympic athlete. And then now you're actually there. And so to take that step back and be grateful for it is important because when you're in the moment, you don't often look at it that way. It's just your life at that point. It's just normal, you know what I mean? But you've dreamed of that your whole life.
that's one of the tough things that many athletes go through is that they don't they mix the criticism of their craft with the criticism of their own lives. And so it's hard to draw that line, but what rewards you in business and in sports does not necessarily reward you in life all the time. So that brings us into our next topic.
Is stretching good
And
or bad?
is stretching good or bad?
Directly right. Perfect setup right there.
Yeah. So is stretching good or bad? I will say it is not the best. And that's coming from the mobility king himself. It's coming from the dude that can get into very weird positions. I don't think stretching is great for you. And why is that? Brett, take it over.
Yeah, well, I think extended periods of stretching. One of the things that I prioritize in my athletic when we were talking about the top three movements for athletics was the elastic reactive response and that snap. And if you're putting yourself in an extended period, a stretch for an extended period of time, you start to lose that elasticity. You could think about like a rubber band. You know, if you stretch it out for an extended period of time, eventually it will loosen and it will lose that snap.
And we could even go into the muscle spindles. So this is a Joel Seedman term, and it's not an actual Joel Seedman term, but this is how he uses this is the argument that he uses for his 90-degree eccentric isometrics is that muscle spindle activation peaks at 90% at 90 degrees. And as soon as you go lower, you don't have as much. So if we're talking about maximum force output, you want to make sure that those muscle spindles are at their peak position. So is stretch good or bad? I think the body can adapt. I think the body can adapt to higher ranges of motion, but you cannot ignore science. And especially if we're talking about athletes. Now, if we're talking about general population, I think full range of motion lifting is amazing. That is the best way to gain high levels of mobility. That is how I gained high levels of mobility was full range of motion lifting and being very intentional on the eccentric portion, doing it with great amounts of control and coming out of that position. Notice how I said it coming out of that position because stretching or getting into a stretch, getting into a deep lunge, getting into a deep squat, it's not about just getting into it. It's about the way you come out of it. And a big thing with the fascia is the fascia doesn't like to be in certain positions too long. So if you can train that, you can maintain your elasticity by coming into it pretty slow, pretty controlled, and then boom, exploding out of it. And if you could get into an ATG split squat, for example, full range of motion where you're fully controlling it, there's no wobbling, there's no, I mean, obviously, like that could happen, but if you're wobbling, grab a freaking stick, grab a stick, put your hand on something. Like you want full balance. The wobbling is not necessarily, it's not going to help you. It's only going to diminish you. You could build by putting your hand on something. And then if you're able to come out of it, imagine your body just has that much more resiliency.
Yeah, that's the key part right there. That's the key part right there because if you think about, like your movement patterns, if they're not ideal, and then you put yourself into some, overstretched position, some aggressive position, I don't believe that that's going to help your movement, help your mobility. I think it would just further compromise it, especially if you're not considering the fascial lines or the integrity of the joints when you're getting into these strange ranges of motion. I will say though, a good, it's like a feel thing. Like it can feel good doing it, but you want to be smart in your approach, I would say.
Now let's clarify our position because we're not saying that you should never stretch. We're just saying there's better ways to stretch. So both of us are in agreement that if you do a long stretch, like where you're holding a position for a long time, it's not as beneficial as being able to get into the range of motion and coming out of it. And one more thing is if your body is in alignment and you're moving properly, you have this thing called natural flexibility, where your body trusts itself enough to get into ranges of motion that are considered pretty deep. And for example, I haven't stretched in about 2 months. It's been 2 months since I've done mobility work. It's been 2 months since I've done any stretching, and I can still get into full range splits without warm up. I could do that on the pod, but I don't think it's necessary, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, if you never seen this guy do a split, you could or do some mobility, you could certainly do a little scrolling on the Instagrams
Yeah, I
and
don't need to
find
prove
it.
I don't need to prove that I can get
Yeah.
into positions. Like you just go onto my page.
Yeah, yeah. And if you do enjoy, the static stretching and whatnot, I think it would be wise to do some elastic training, some jumping, some rebound, like repeat jumps and whatnot. And there's other ways to do that as well, but you certainly want to train that property.
Yeah, because you can't lose if you lose the elasticity, your body is extremely prone to getting injured. And
Yeah.
that's not hyper flexibility is a problem in peer review science. It's a problem in our our niche. It's a problem in every single aspect. Hyperflexibility is not good. So if you're extremely mobile without the stability and without the strength, the elasticity, you're not going to be better off than if you could do a split, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably good on stretching. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to talk more about it.
Yeah. Okay, so our ninth question here. I think it's our eighth question. Which sport is the most athletic or impressive? So I'll jump into that one first. So when I would say that like athletic and impressive, I think are different things. For me, if I'm thinking about athletic and I'm thinking about athletically gifted, I would think coordinated. I think coordination. Um, so I would think an athlete who can pick up new tasks, who can go into a new sport, like a skill-based sport, and learn those skills and learn those techniques relatively quickly, and also excel at them and do well. I would say that is the more athletic person. So which sport has those athletes? I think baseball. I would say baseball is a very athletic sport. You have the qualities of sprinting. I think being able to you have the rotation, of course. Being able to hit a baseball coming at you 90, 100 miles an hour is incredibly difficult. You have the catching aspect. Um, I come from a baseball background, so I'm biased. So that's kind of I'm kind of speaking from personal experience here. I've been able to pick up new sports very well coming from a baseball background. Um, so yeah, I think that the baseball players are very athletically gifted and coordinated individuals. From an impressive standpoint, I always say Olympic weightlifting is very impressive to me. Like people dream of deadlifting 400 pounds and then you see somebody clean and jerk it or snatch. It's crazy.
So I have two answers for the sport that's most athletic. Actually, no, I have one answer, and then I have a deviated answer. But my first answer is basketball players because the amount of quickness, the amount of constantly constantly getting that elastic recoil on the feet, constantly jumping, turn of direction, having to sprint to one side of the court, sprint to the other, and you're kind of not stopping. And then on top of that, you have to be fully aware of one ball on the field. So that right there, their transfer into other sports, basketball players are a lot of NFL players, a lot of track athletes, a lot of any athlete really has there's a lot of time there's a correlation between them and basketball at some point. And then another one, when we talk about most athletic, we talk about coordination. So I put the argument for swimmers because swimming is you get taken out of the element that you're naturally prone to, which is land, and you get thrown into water. Then you have to coordinate the entire body moving at once while being in another element and being perfect on each rep. In baseball, there's a lot of variability. Basketball, there's extreme amounts of variability. Fighting, there is variability. Weightlifting, there's not as much variability because you're very perfect. But the thing about swimming is you have to be coordinating the entire body to feel everything at once while trying to minimize your drag on a surface that creates enormous amounts of drag. And that's not easy. That's not easy. So swimmers have extreme amounts of flexibility because try it without moving your shoulder, without your shoulder lifting or lowering. Bring your whole arm, lifting your elbow first, and then bringing your arm across and pulling it without moving your shoulder. Obviously, there's going to be a tiny bit of movement, but yeah, you're lifting your shoulder. Right there, you're using too much. You're going to be using too much of your rotator cuff to pull. So essentially, you want to do like a shoulder car, and you're coming around and you're coming right outside of the head. Like your stroke is right outside of the head, right outside of the shoulder. So you're pulling from the lat.
Yeah, that's I've never worked on swimming technique. What I think is very impressive about swimmers is you're outside of your element. You're out in water. And so it
And we're
takes
doing all this while holding our breath. Not allowed to breathe.
yeah, swimming is crazy. What else is crazy out there, Andrew? What other sports are there?
Strongman, strongman. It's that sport right there. I mean, people completely underrate them as athletes because they're seen as fat dudes. But strongmen are they're doing cardio. They're doing explosive movement. Like if you just think about swinging the kettles, they swing the what are they called? The beer.
Oh, kegs?
Yeah, the kegs. There we go. The beer. They're throwing beer kegs that weigh like 40, 50 pounds, like 50 feet in the air. Think about the explosiveness that you need to do that. Those are some real freaking athletes. They'll pick up like 400 pounds in each hand and run. And then they'll
Crazy.
pick it up like this, like sandbag training, the stones, their static strength, their ability, their flexibility, because you don't get into those positions easily to pick up that stuff.
Yeah, I think when it comes to like excelling at gym training, like if you want the gym to be your sport, so like what sports are gym focused? Well, we have powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, strongman, bodybuilding. I think that's all of them, right? There's probably some others I'm missing. Strongman is that's some impressive stuff. That's like got to be top of the top. Olympic lifting is going to be like very precise and technical, also impressive, but strongmen are on another level.
Strongman is the king of unconventional lifting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, all the unconventional guys out there doing sandbag kettlebell, strongman people are doing it to a whole other level.
Yeah. So I think we pretty much answered that question.
1,000 pound yoke carries and yeah, craziness. Yeah, I think we pretty much covered that. We pretty much covered that. Um, and just like advice for people, like giving people advice on their training. Um, I think trying out new things is important. I think trying out new things is important. Like get outside of your element and go try something. Go try something new. So question number 9 here is someone asked, how do you calculate RPE? And so RPE is the rate of perceived exertion on an exercise. So how do we go about calculating that? Andrew, you want to take the lead on that one? I think the
Yeah,
intent.
so huh?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So first of all, to calculate rate of perceived exertion, you have to achieve your 100%. Once you know your 100%, you understand what 100% feels like. Once you like after knowing what it feels like, then you can understand what 80% feels like because you're going pretty hard, but it's not quite that 100. And this is something that swimmers have to know right from the get-go. I'd say as early as 10, 11 years old, we're learning this because coaches will say 1050s or 850s, 1 to 4. So number one, you're about 70%. Number two, you're about 80. Three, you're about 90. And then four, you're at 100. So if you learn 100, then you understand 80. And it just takes feeling. It takes trying to get like you're gonna have to get through a lot of exhaustion periods before you fully understand it, but kind of just gotta dive into it and go at 100.
Yeah. Yeah, and it takes a level of awareness to be able to use that method, right? Because 85 and 90 are
Very different.
very different, and it could be hard to determine for someone who's not used to who doesn't understand that 100%. Yeah, I think that's going to be, step number 1, right? And then the percentage of effort that you're using, like understand that could be applied to any exercise. It could be applied to any exercise. So, and also I think it could be used for like, the CNS aspect, right? So you could have a number that you're going to hit, that you want to hit, or you could have a percentage on that day. Like right now, this is like my 100%, or right now, this is, my 70% that I'm feeling. So having an intent and a focus behind the effort that you're putting out on the drill is a good way to utilize that method in your training.
So a safe way to learn this with your weightlifting is with your warm-up weights to imagine that it's the heaviest lift you've ever done and putting the same amount of force that you would put for your max lift for your warm-up. So for example, if you squat 405, you imagine how hard it's going to be to squat 405, and then when you're squatting the bar, you kind of feel what that 100% feels like so that you can feel it more so than calculated. Because if you're going to calculate 80% exertion, that's not going to be of the 405. That's 80% of your max. Now, 80% of the weight is different than 80% of the exertion. So that's something that will help you understand your force output is using the lighter weights to really produce that force and to really treat it like the heavyweights.
Yeah. Yeah, understanding that no weight can be just as challenging when we're talking about exertion as something heavy. So like jumping or max velocity sprinting, that could be 100% or a 10 out of 10 RPE, right? But so could a 405-pound squat. So they're certainly different. I think there's value to using the RPE method.
And again, it's not going to be easy to calculate this stuff. It's going to take a lot of I like the weights method because that's an easier way to test it. Because if you're gonna jump all out and you're gonna do another jump right after, you don't necessarily know if that was an 80% jump or not. Like someone like me, for example, I know if I'm jumping hard, I know if I'm jumping soft. Like I know if I'm at a certain percentage, but I've been thinking about this quite literally since I was 8 years old. So it's not exactly like to me it's something that I understand, but if you are trying to figure it out, using the low weights method will be one of your best friends for sure.
Yeah. RPE, rate of perceived exertion. Okay, well what if we wanted to to push up our 10 out of 10? Like, like right now we have a 10 out of 10, but we want to push it up, you know.
Stay at 8. Stay at 8 for a long time and you really perfect that at 8. And then once you're really good at 8, then you build up to the 100. And my theory, I don't know if this is your theory, but my theory is getting really good at the 7 and the 8 makes your neural patterning very willing to go to 10 and be able to do multiple rounds at 10 if you really understand 7 and 8.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing I don't really use this method, but the RPE method, but um one thing that I've found success with is periodizing the energy systems. Periodizing the energy systems. So spending a 2 to 3 weeks working on under 10 seconds, and then spending 2 to 3 weeks working on a little bit more and a little bit more until we start getting into lactic work. And then you could come back and you could come back and you could go back. And then now you're let's say you were tracking numbers on a, I don't know, just call it 100, like you're running the 100, and you have your times, and then you spend time developing it, and then you come back after some time, and not talking about for a 100-meter sprinter, but maybe a fighter was using that as a test, spend some time developing it, come back, and then now we're seeing improvement. So periodizing the different energy systems, I think, is something worth considering.
I think that would be a little bit more valuable than calculating your RPE.
Yeah, and the energy systems for people who don't know would be, you can Google these and find training methods on them, but it would be your alactic power, your alactic capacity, your lactic power, and then your lactic capacity. And so you could set those up in a periodized method. Question number 10. So, and then we have a bonus question here that we were talking about before the podcast. But the last question we received, to what point do you follow a certain training methodology? So up to what point are you going to listen to what someone else has to say? So there's a lot of big systems out there, but yeah, Andrew, you could take the lead on this one.
So my biggest thing when it comes to methodologies, because I've gone into quite literally all of them, is you follow it until you find what you don't like. Every single person is different, and all of these methodologies are going to have some flaws. So up to what point are you a follower? It's until you find something you don't necessarily agree with, and then you start tying in things that you've learned before or things from new things that you will learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because and another important part of that is having the experience with all of them. Because
Right.
if you only have experience with one, you can't even determine what is flawed about it or how we could incorporate some other things into the system. Um, for example, I see sport coach like SNCs out there following the Louis Simmons method, the max effort day, the dynamic day, and then you do one for upper, one for you have your max effort upper, max effort lower, dynamic upper, dynamic lower. It's like, but these guys aren't power lifters. Like that was a powerlifting methodology. So it's like we can take a lot from that. We could take the optimal loading charts, like the Priplin's chart. We can take some theories that come from the dynamic efforts, and apply those into our athletic training system. If we're doing lifting, but following something like that to a T is not necessarily going to support the goal of the individual. So you have to know what number one, what's the goal of the individual, and then use some critical thinking and decide what you want to do from there. Me, I'm right there with what Andrew said. I want to know all of the different systems, and then formulate my own system. And the system you use is dependent on the individual. So if I'm working with this person, he needs something different than this person. And so having a good base of knowledge is going to be the key. I don't think you should really follow any methodology to a T unless that's what you specialize in. And then at that point, people are coming to you for that one system, right? But if you're
Well, something that both of us followed for some time was Goda. I mean, I've been with Goda. I've been using Goda since 2019, and it wasn't until recently where I found the big flaws in it. It wasn't until recently where I truly understood the flaws of it. And one thing I will say is, while I'm a huge fan of biomechanical efficiency, having biomechanical efficiency is using the full body. One thing that Goda preaches is not using the big toe. What's the problem with not using the big toe? I'll tell you my experience. A lot of back pain. A lot of back pain and not great movement pattern, especially if you're wearing barefoot shoes all the time. You need that big toe in order to make your glute press. So both of us have had massive experience within our own practice. Forget about training somebody else. Within our own practice of trying out these different methods, go into them until we find something that isn't necessarily what's going to benefit us. So again, and each training system is going to have slightly different things, like the movement systems, like functional patterns, WEC method, GOTA. We can even go into Power Plus as movement people. We could go into primal movement. Every single one of those systems has a lot of overlaps. And that's the biggest thing that most people don't want to agree upon, is that the overlaps mean that we could take a little bit from here. We could take a little bit from here. We could take a little bit from here. And then we develop best practice for the South.
That's the key. That's the key right there. That's the key right there. And finding yourself in a system that doesn't allow that is a big problem. That's a big problem.
Yeah.
Like if you're working with somebody and they're very stuck on their ways and they're actually, going as far as telling you that you can't do another way, that's not okay. That's not all
That's a
right.
massive red flag. Massive red flag.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you should not be working with that coach. I'm gonna say that straight up. I don't care who it offends. But if someone is telling you that their method is the absolute best and nothing else will work for you, you gotta go tell that person to go fuck themselves.
Yeah, and there's a difference between something being like clearly wrong, but that's like amateur level stuff. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to something being so bad that we're like, hey, like that's wrong, like just basic form stuff or whatnot. But when it comes into these little details and whatnot, there's room for creation. There's room for your own implementation, right? So so yeah, that's going to be very important. You got to have variability.
Quick example. I mean, we could go into an example about this. The deadlift being bad. Functional patterns, number one main selling point is that, well, I don't know if that's their main selling point, but that's something that to they preach anybody's ear off who will listen. That the deadlift is sacrilegious to their system. And realistically, you got a freaking deadlift. Like there's like the more and more I think about it, how do you train picking something up from the floor without picking something up from the floor?
100%. Yeah. And the deadlift would be you know, probably the most efficient way to pick something up from the floor.
Or a Jefferson curl for that matter. Like you're gonna tell me that in no part of your life is it going to require you to bend your spine and come back up.
Yeah.
Picking up your kid is like a half Jefferson curl.
Yeah, and I think the amount of input, like for me, I think absolute strength is important. And what's the best way to develop absolute strength? And when I say that, I'm talking about lifting the most amount of weight possible so you get as strong as possible. Well, it's going to be the traditional powerlifting methods. Those you're going to be able to lift the most amount of weight. I can't think of many other exercises where you could lift as much as you can on a deadlift. Now, that doesn't mean we have to take it to a crazy extent. But if we're looking to put on some absolute strength, deadlift, bench press, box squat, those I mean those you can't really load an exercise much more than you can load those. And I'm not saying you got to load it heavy every single day, every single week. Um, but those exercises are really good for that specific trait.
And another thing as well, this is something that turns me off, especially to the functional patterns. If you're telling me something is bad, but then not telling me why it's bad and what can be done better, to me, that just sounds like you're trying to call me stupid. You're trying to call me stupid. You're trying to think that I don't have the rational ability to make a point. And so that's where this whole idea gets tied back into the how far do you go into a methodology is you're an individual with intelligence. Remember that. If something doesn't make that much sense to you, question it. Never lose the ability and never lose the confidence to question. Because just because these people are so called experts, they're not feeling what you're feeling when you're doing the thing.
100%. Yep. 100%. Okay. So that's good on that one. We have one final question that we decided we'd throw in here because we were talking about this before we started the episode. And that's just what are our experiences with running? So like the trends we're seeing with running and then our own personal experiences.
So running is become massive right now. It's I'm gonna speak to my experience in Miami, but there's a run club seemingly every day, and there's a different run club popping up, and it's just turned into this massive trend that's putting a lot of social pressure on people to just pick up and start running.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like Running is good. Running is, fundamental human function. Uh, but what we were talking about is, you know, progress wisely, right? So because injuries can happen for sure, especially with something like running, sprinting, it's very high impact. It's very high impact. So like me in my training, I decided to take a fight and I instantly went from essentially no running to then running, 3, 5, 7, 10 miles right away. And I got injured. I hurt my knee. So if you have to progress wisely. I've never done a run club, but I'd imagine what do they run? 5Ks, like more? 5Ks is pretty popular. For someone to just pick up and decide to run a 5K with zero running, uh
Ridiculous.
yeah, not okay.
Ridiculous. I mean, look, I'm not a fan of the run clubs. I don't diss anybody that goes to a run club. I'm just not personally a fan of it because if I'm going to go for a run, I 1,000,000% do not want a group of people around me. That's something that I do on my own. That's something that's for my own self. So I do not need a group around me while I'm trying to run. And I used to run a lot too. I used to run a lot too. And I'm gonna let you go into what you were saying, but I used to run a ton, and that's not something that I want to be sharing. That's not an experience that I necessarily want to be sharing with other people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, some people probably love the social aspect of it, but I know a lot of people that love the meditative aspect of running. And these are runners, right? Like these are people that have been running, but they'll run and it's like their peace. So running for you, for you watching could be that if you never tried that. But just, go about progressing in a smart way. Go about progressing in a smart way. So
And again, we aren't talking down on the run clubs because they are doing a great thing for people. It's getting people to move, it's getting people motivated to have fun with movement, and giving it that social aspect allows people that might otherwise not do it get into something new. But our whole thing is don't get into it out of the blue. Like don't go because you want to impress that one girl and then you end up messing up your entire week because you decided to run a 5K when you haven't ran in years.
yeah, and from a general fitness perspective, like a gym pop perspective, I think people have these ideas of like, I'm gonna get into fitness, and then they look at, or maybe you're already in fitness, right? But then you find that there's a local 5K or 10K, going on in your city, and you're like, I'm gonna partake in this, and you haven't trained for it. Yeah, you're gonna be feeling that. You're gonna be feeling that afterwards for some time, and knee injuries and all types of injuries could result from improper training.
And there's also the overtraining aspect because look, I'm gonna explain my experience with running. So when I was running, it's while at the same time as swimming. So we would start out our practices where every single day we'd run a 5K. And if we didn't run a 5K, it was like a little bit over a mile, but it ended up being like pretty close to 5K every single day. And then we get in the pool and swim like some 5,000, 6,000 meters. That is just complete overtraining on the body. It's not good for the knees. It was not good for my knees. It's one of the things that led to my ACL tear back in 2019 was just the overuse and the I wasn't very good at mobility at the time either. I was very flexible, but not very good at mobility. And I could talk to the training that I was doing at the time as well that led to that. But a big thing was overtraining, where I'm doing this full extension and flexion, being very loose in the water. And then those aspects, being in the water doesn't necessarily translate to being good on land. And one thing that swimmers have is extremely flexible ankles, very flexible knees, and very flexible thoracic spines. Thoracic spine flexibility or mobility is great for running, but the knees, and the ankles, you don't want them flexible during running. You don't want them to be touching the ground. You don't want them. You want them to be as stiff as freaking possible. So those two didn't correlate pretty well. So you first of all, you gotta evaluate what you're doing outside of the running before you get into running and see if that fits in your schedule and how you can make it fit. But if you're a yogi that is only doing yoga, don't go for a run. Work on your ankles first before you go on a run.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What about we'll close it out with some positives of running. So what's the good part about it?
Fundamental human movement. There's not another thing that you'll do where there's not another thing on land where you'll truly be challenging your mental state and the will to stop. Like with weights, you could just put it down. With running, you can just stop, but you can push through it, and then it's a little bit safer than weights because you just end up getting into this meditative state where you're just moving, you've got your heart pumping, there's this massive endorphin effect. And number three, it feels really fun to run. Like if you're running and you're bouncing on your toes, like you're getting that good stride, there's like massive neurological benefits. Dopamine, and going for a run is the same thing as taking an Adderall. It has the same effect on the brain, just a little bit. Adderall is obviously a little bit more pronounced because it's a drug.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. It's a fundamental human motion. Um, and I think I've been leaning more into the max velocity, the full speed rather than the long distance. Like the running for your life, the flight versus the jog. So and if you wanted to be able to do that, the RPE could be a pretty good method, honestly, because you certainly don't want to go out there if you're not used to it and go run a full effort sprint. So maybe you go six,
Absolutely.
spend some time at 6 out of 10, 2 weeks at 6 out of 10, 2 weeks 7, 2 weeks 8. Now we're starting to, get up there a little bit. Um, but yeah, I think running is great. I think you should be able to do it. Um, and yeah, there's certainly a lot of mental benefits. You're tackling a challenge. You're bettering yourself. You're working hard. Just like any form of working out. All forms of exercise are great. Um, yeah, yeah, running is good. Running is really good. We should be able to do it.
Yeah, and just to cap this off, um, both of us are continuously evolving in our practice, evolving our mentalities. I think the Brett from 6 months ago, the Brett today can say a lot about the Brett from 6 months ago. Andrew can say a lot about the Andrew from 6 months ago, say a lot about what he was wrong about, say a lot about what he was right about, and say a lot about how he expanded upon each thing. And as you watch our podcast and as we continue to go on with this, I want you guys to be just as willing to admit you're wrong and just as willing to see where you can evolve in each stage of your practice, in each stage of your workouts. Never lose the ability to question what the hell we say. We're not the number one experts. Everything that we say should be looked at under a microscope as well. Put your little magnifying glass and research for yourself. Look for yourself. Become the expert in whatever the hell you want to become an expert in, but like don't lose that ability to question because that will ultimately make you a smarter human.
Yeah, yeah. Be willing to learn. Be willing to learn. I think a lot of people get to a certain point and then they think they learned what they needed to, and then that's it. And it's like
And I don't
there's
believe in that
more.
because
No.
like endless knowledge. The world has endless knowledge, and each day will bring you new knowledge. If you allow it to, if you don't live under the lens that I know everything and everything I do is right, then every single day has a new lesson for you.
Yeah, it's always evolving. There's always new stuff out there. When credit cards came out, people thought those were going to be a big problem. When the computer came out, when the internet came out, people thought it was crazy. Cell phones, people were like, "What the heck is going on now?" AI, people are still behind on AI. Movement, which is what we're focused on, people are lost and they're behind time. They're behind the times about movement training. And it's just as simple as not being willing to learn. And so if you could just open up your mind and express new ideas and let those come in, there's a lot of value to that. And that's what we're trying to do here. Yeah,
And
share.
you'll see the evolution as we go.
Oh yeah.
You'll see it as we go. Like I can't tell you for a fact, but I can imagine that some things we've said on maybe episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, where there's a slight contradiction in some of the things we're saying now, because
Yep.
you have to remember that life happens day by day. So every day will have a new lesson, and maybe that new lesson proves that what you thought was right even a week ago might be wrong. So just keep an open mind and keep that willingness to learn, and you'll go very far in finding out yourself, finding out like the being that you are.
Yeah. Watching this podcast, you can be assured that we're not those guys that are done learning. I mean, that's all we
No.
do. I mean, we're going back and forth every day, sending stuff to each other, books, studies, texting back and forth, sending information. So, and if you're watching this and you're a loyal listener, ask us questions because you're going to help us. We'll answer your questions. Maybe you have some information that we're missing, and we are open to learning that. So, be
Yeah,
interactive.
look, if you tell me I'm wrong, that's the best gift you could give me.
Yeah,
Then that forces me to really evaluate my position and really evaluate what I think I believe.
100%. Yep, we're trying to bring you guys the best information that we can, and that's the goal.
Well, this has been another great episode.
Absolutely. Thank you
We
guys for
thank you
watching.
guys for coming. Yeah. Yeah, we thank you guys for coming along, and if you've stuck around to this point, we're beyond thankful for you. This podcast has been super fun. Not just this specific one, but every single one that we've done. This has been absolutely awesome. Brett and I are super grateful to be able to be in this position to give you guys what is in our heads and for you guys to listen. So yeah, I'm that's my closing thought.
Yeah, man, we're here to stay. So we're gonna keep bringing this to you, and we're gonna keep evolving. We're gonna keep bringing the best information that we have. Bringing on good guests. We're gonna continue to bring on good guests for you guys, so you can learn from them directly. And yeah, man, this is the podcast that you want to be tuned into. I can tell you that.
This is the end of season 1.
And this is the end of season one. 10 banger episodes. And we got 10.
10 episodes.
Hey, we
Wow.
got we got 10 bangers coming for season two. That's gonna be like making this look like, hey, this will be good to look back on. We'll be like, that was our first season.
Yeah, and stay tuned, guys, because we're working on some things that we're not going to talk about any of the things that we're working on, but we're working on bringing some good stuff to you guys.
It's coming. All right, guys. Thank you guys for watching season one. Haha, the first 10 episodes of the Power Talks podcast. I'm Brett. You got Andrew here. We'll tag our Instagrams below. And yeah, man, we'll see you. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Catch you guys next time.